The wind howled through the white mountains, cold enough to freeze bones. Grant pressed his gloved hand over his face as he trudged through the deep snow. His beard was crusted with frost. His jacket heavy with ice. He hadn't planned to come this far. He was only looking for old wreckage, a ship that had crashed during the last storm. Maybe something worth salvaging, but then he heard it. It was faint, almost like the cry of an animal. A soft sound, not strong. More like a whimper. He stopped and listened. There it was, again coming from the trees near the frozen hill. Curious, he moved toward it, slowly, carefully. The snow made every step harder, but the sound kept calling him. It wasn't an animal, he realized. It sounded like a child. A child. Alone in this freezing place, that was impossible, wasn't it? There were no children here, not on this planet. It was a mining colony, cold and abandoned. The aliens who once ruled this land were long gone. Or so people said, but as Grant reached the hill, he saw her. She was curled under a crooked tree. Her body almost buried in snow. Pale blue skin, lips turning purple, long white hair full of ice and dust. She looked like a statue made of ice. If she was still alive, it would be a miracle. Grant dropped to his knees beside her. He reached out to touch her neck, a weak pulse, slow, barely there. Her fingers were stiff and bare, her clothes thin. Nothing more than a rough hoodie, completely useless in this deadly cold. What in the hell? Grant whispered, then caught himself. The girl stirred, just a little. Her glowing eyes, large and alien, opened just enough to look at him. Please, she whispered, voice almost silent, warm. That one word shattered his doubt. She wasn't a threat, she wasn't a trick, she was dying. Without another thought, Grant pulled off his heavy coat and wrapped her in it. She didn't weigh much at all. Like a bird, he lifted her into his arms and began the long walk back to his shelter. The wind bit harder, snow came down faster. He knew he was risking his life. But leaving her there would be murder, no matter what species she was. No matter how strange she looked, the cabin was small. Metal and stone pressed into a warm shape, old, but Grant had repaired it over time. A heater worked in the corner, firewood stacked on the side as soon as he stepped inside. He kicked the door shut and placed the girl near the fire. Her skin was like ice. He stripped off her frozen hoodie and wrapped her in 3 layers of dry blankets. Then he boiled water, poured it into a metal bottle, and slipped it under the cloth near her belly to warm her core. Minutes passed, long and silent. She didn't speak. But she kept her eyes open, watching him. Her glowing irises were the color of a dying star, deep gold mixed with sadness. Can you hear me? Grant asked gently. She blinked once. I'm not going to hurt you, he said. You're safe now. Her fingers twitched. He reached out his hand slowly, palm up. She looked at it for a long time. Then her own tiny hand slid into his. It was cold and shaking, but she held it. That moment did something inside him. It hurt, but not in a bad way. It reminded him of another small hand, once held long ago, his daughter's. Before the accident, before Earth became ashes, he shook the thought away. The past was gone. This girl needed him now. By morning, her breathing was steady, her color returning. She sat up slowly, looking around the room like an animal ready to run. Grant gave her warm soup in a metal cup. She sipped it carefully, not spilling a drop. What's your name? He asked. She looked down, afraid to answer, then softly whispered, Kari. That's a nice name, Grant said, smiling. I'm Grant. She nodded once. Kari, he repeated. Why were you out there? Alone in the snow. She didn't answer. Her face went pale again, like remembering something terrible. He didn't push. He could see she was scared. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat in the corner, knees pulled to her chest, watching the door. Grant noticed every time the wind howled. She flinched. At one point, she whispered, "They're looking for me." "Who?" Grant asked, walking over. She shook her head. "No talk," she whispered. "Okay," he said. "You don't have to." But Grant wasn't a fool. The next day, while she slept, he went outside to check the edge of the woods, there fresh. Footprints, not his and not hers. He followed them a few yards until he saw a metal rod stuck into a tree, blinking with red light. A tracker. Someone had planted it to scan for movement, and maybe to scan for Kari's DNA. He destroyed it and returned quickly when Kari woke. Her eyes went wide and fearful. "Did you leave the house?" she asked. He nodded. "Please," she begged, "don't go out again." That fear in her voice made him clench his fists. Whatever she had run from it was still out there, and it was cruel. That night, she cried in her sleep, mumbled strange words. Grant sat beside her and held her hand again. When she woke, she looked at him with eyes full of water. "You're not like them," she whispered. He asked, "Who are them?" She just said, "They built me. But I ran away." Later, Grant noticed something even stranger. Her back had strange scars, small circles. Too perfect to be natural. Not wounds from war or survival. They looked like implant scars, like something had been placed inside her. Machines, chips, tools. He didn't ask that night. She was just a child, and she was still scared. That was all he needed to know for now. The next morning, Kari sat near the fire and stared at his old photo frame one. "With a young girl and a smiling man, that your family?" she asked, voice soft. "Yes," Grant said. "She was my daughter. She gone?" "Yes." Kari touched the frame gently, then looked up. "Can I be yours?" Grant froze. It felt like the air had stopped. He looked at her, those glowing eyes full of silent hope. Then he nodded. "You already are." Kari smiled for the first time. It was small and shy, but it lit the room better than the fire ever could. Kari slowly got stronger over the next few days. She no longer shook from the cold, and her skin became a healthier shade of pale blue. Her hands still trembled when she touched anything, and her eyes were always full of caution. But she stayed close to Grant, never more than a few steps away from him. She didn't speak much, but she watched everything he did. If he boiled water, she would stare. Curious if he fixed something on the wall, she would lean close, eyes wide with wonder. It was as if she had never seen a human before, or maybe she had just never seen kindness. Grant made her food soft and warm. Using supplies from the underground storage, she ate like someone who had gone hungry for a long time fast. Quiet and careful. "Slow down. It's okay," he would say. And each time, she would look up with big golden eyes and try to smile. She barely spoke, but one word came out often. "Safe." She would whisper it as she curled up near the fireplace. She would whisper it in her sleep too, like a prayer. Safe. Safe. One afternoon, as snow fell lightly outside, Grant sat at his small wooden desk, working on a broken communication panel. Kari sat nearby, her feet tucked under her, watching him closely. He could feel her eyes studying his every move. "You want to learn this?" he asked, without looking up. She blinked, surprised. He pointed at the wires. "You've ever fixed anything before?" Kari didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, she reached out and touched the damaged circuit. Her fingers lit with a faint blue spark, not electric, but something different. Strange symbols flashed on the broken screen for a moment, then disappeared. Grant stared. "Was that you?" Kari pulled her hand back quickly, frightened. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "I just feel the machines." "You feel them?" Kari nodded. "I don't know how. It just happens." Grant didn't understand it fully, but he could see it scared her. He put a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. You don't have to hide from me." She looked at him, hopeful but unsure. No one ever said that to me before. She said quietly, that night, something strange happened. Grant was asleep, but Kari couldn't rest. She kept hearing sounds outside, soft clicks, almost like metal feet in the snow. Her heartbeat quickened. She stood up and moved to the window, parting the cloth curtain just a little. Down the slope, past the trees, she saw red, blinking lights. Small, quiet, moving quickly drones. Her eyes widened. She backed away from the window and rushed to Grant's side, shaking his arm. Wake up, she whispered. They're here. Grant sat up fast, grabbing his old blaster from the shelf. What do you mean? Who's here? Kari pointed to the window. The ones who made me. They found me. Grant moved quickly to the control panel and turned off all lights. The cabin went dark. He then used a small thermal camera to look through the walls, shapes. Moved outside 3 small drones, moving in circles, scanning. They didn't enter, but they were searching. Kari hid behind the sofa. Holding a pillow against her chest like a shield, she looked so small and scared. Grant crouched beside her, keeping his voice calm. They won't get you, I promise, but they always come, she whispered. They always find me. And they take me back. They put wires in me. They make me do things. Bad things? Grant felt something burn in his chest. Anger. Someone had treated this child like a tool, not a person. And now they were hunting her like she was property. He looked into her golden eyes and said slowly, no one is taking you. From me, Kari, not now, not ever. The next day, the drones were gone, but their tracks were still visible in the snow. Grant walked around the cabin's edge and found a small black cylinder stuck to a tree, another tracker. He smashed it with a hammer and buried it deep under ice, inside the cabin. Kari was drawing something on a piece of scrap paper. It looked like a map, or maybe a circuit design. Her hands moved fast, like she was remembering something she wasn't supposed to. What's that? Grant asked. Kari looked at it, confused. I don't know. It just comes into my head sometimes. Grant studied the sketch. It wasn't normal. It looked like high-level alien tech. Even the lines and shapes didn't follow human design. Something deep inside her still remembered the place she escaped. From that night, Grant made hot cocoa. Kari sipped it with a smile, warmth returning to her face. For a moment, things felt normal, almost like a real family. Then she asked a strange question. Why do you help me? Grant paused. No one else ever did, she added. He leaned back and looked at her carefully. Because I lost someone once, he said. My daughter, she was about your age. Kind, brave, and smart. She died when Earth was attacked. Kari placed her cup down and moved closer. I'm sorry, me too, Grant whispered. They sat in silence for a while. Then Kari said something that made Grant's heart skip. If I wasn't made. If I was born like your daughter, would you still care for me? He didn't speak. He simply wrapped his arm around her shoulder and held her close. You don't need to be born human to be my daughter, he said. You already are. Kari leaned against him, and for the first time, she felt like she belonged outside in the cold night, deep in the trees. A tall figure stood quietly, watching the cabin through a visor screen. He tapped the side of his helmet and spoke into a mic. Asset is confirmed. She's with a human male, awaiting further orders. The next morning, Kari stood at the window again. Watching the trees, her eyes were calm, but her small fingers trembled as they touched the glass. Grant stepped beside her with 2 metal cups of warm tea. He gave her one, and she held it with both hands, soaking in the heat. They didn't come back last night, she said softly. Grant nodded. That doesn't mean they won't. She looked up at him. They won't stop until they take me back. They always find me. Grant knelt beside her and looked her straight in the eyes. They'll have to go through me first. Kari blinked, surprised. Then she whispered, You mean that? Every word, Grant spent the next hours building stronger defenses around the cabin. He buried motion sensors, set heat traps, and reinforced the front door. Kari stayed inside. But she kept looking at the sketches she had made circles. Patterns, strange symbols. She wasn't sure why she kept drawing them. They came from somewhere deep in her mind, like pieces of a broken memory. Later that afternoon, she asked, "Do you think I'm dangerous?" Grant turned to her, surprised. "Why would you ask that?" "Because I can feel things, control machines. I don't know how I do it. But I think that's why they made me." Grant sat down beside her and placed his hand over hers. "Maybe you were made, maybe not," he said gently, "but you're not dangerous. Kari, they are. They're the ones who hurt you." She nodded slowly, but her eyes stayed troubled. That evening, the two of them sat by the fire. Grant shared stories of Earth, how oceans looked, how sunlight warmed your skin, how trees moved. In the wind, Kari listened like a child hearing fairy tales. "Did Earth have snow like this?" she asked. "Sometimes," he smiled, "but not this deep. Not this cold." She smiled softly. "I wish I could see it." He looked at her. "One day, we'll find a place like it." She laughed lightly. "You always say we. No one ever included me before. You're not alone anymore." He said, "Your family now," but their peace didn't last that night. Grant woke to a strange humming sound. He grabbed his blaster and stepped out into the frozen darkness. Kari followed, staying just behind him. There, in the trees, was a blinking light blue and white. It hovered in the air. A small drone with a flat, round body before Grant could shoot it. Kari raised her hand and whispered something under her breath. The drone froze mid-air. Then sparks flew from its core, and it dropped to the ground, smoking. "You did that?" Grant asked. Kari nodded slowly. "I didn't mean to. I just didn't want it to see us." Grant bent down and opened the drone's memory chip. What he saw made his blood run cold. Inside was a message. "Asset located. Retrieve immediately. Use force if necessary." He looked at Kari, who was staring at the dead drone. She looked more afraid now than ever before. "Why do they call you Asset?" he asked. "Because I'm not a person to them," she whispered. "I'm a thing, a project, a tool." Grant took her back inside and started digging through his old records. Files, radio logs, security news from old star stations. After hours of work, he finally found something. A report about a secret alien project. Project Carry 7, created by the Draenari Syndicate, a powerful alien empire known for bioengineering. Carry 7 was designed to be a hybrid weapon, part organic, part machine, built to link with any tech, control machines with her mind, and shut down enemy systems silently. But the project was marked as failed and missing. No one had seen the asset for over 2 years. Grant sat back in his chair, stunned. Kari wasn't just a lost girl. She was a weapon. But something had changed. She didn't act like a weapon. She cared. She laughed. She cried. She felt things, real feelings. Kari stood near the fire, watching him. "You found it, didn't you?" she asked. He nodded. She looked down, ashamed. "I didn't want to lie. I just didn't want to be that anymore." "You're not," he said firmly. "You're not what they made you to be. But it's inside me," she whispered. "I feel it when I get scared or angry. I lose control. I can destroy things without touching them." "You saved me," Grant said. "You protected this home, but what if I hurt you next time?" Grant walked over and gently lifted her chin so her eyes met his. "Then we'll face it together. You don't have to do this," she said. "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do," he said. "I owe you love, because you never had it before." The next day, Kari sat alone outside the cabin, watching snowflakes fall. She reached out and caught them in her hands. Each one melted on her blue skin, and each drop reminded her she was alive, but far away. hidden deep within the forest. A ship landed quietly, black and smooth, with the symbol of the Draenari Syndicate painted on its side. 3 alien agents stepped out, fully armed. The leader touched his wrist screen. Begin search. Do not harm the asset. The human is expendable. Inside the ship, another figure stirred, tall, thin, with sharp eyes and a voice cold as ice. He whispered to himself, "She still lives." And the bond with the human is growing. Interesting. Perhaps the experiment was not a failure after all. Back at the cabin, Kari suddenly felt a pressure in her head, like a voice she didn't want to hear. She grabbed her temples and dropped to her knees. "Kari." Grant rushed out and held her shoulders. "What's wrong?" "They're near," she whispered, eyes glowing with fear. "They're calling me again, trying to turn me back." Grant helped her stand. "We'll run if we have to." "No," she said. "I don't want to run forever. I want to be free." Grant looked at her and nodded slowly. "Then we fight." The wind outside the cabin had stopped, but Kari's heart was racing. She sat on the floor, her knees tight to her chest, hands shaking. Grant knelt beside her, one arm wrapped around her back. "What did you feel?" he asked gently. "There." "Closer now," Kari whispered. "Too close." She looked up at him, fear glowing in her golden eyes. "They're not just drones anymore," she added. "There are soldiers, and one of them, he can talk into my head." Grant's jaw tightened. "You mean they're sending telepaths?" Kari nodded. "They know I'm afraid," she whispered. "That makes me easier to control." Grant stood, grabbed his gear bag, and tossed a few emergency tools inside. "We can't stay here anymore," he said. "We need to move." Kari stood slowly, still holding onto his jacket sleeve like a scared child. "Where will we go?" "To the canyon base. It's underground, old mining tunnels. They won't find us easily there by the time the sun broke over the White Mountains." The two were already on their way. Kari wore warm layers. The oversized coat Grant had given her still wrapped tight around her small frame. They moved through thick snow, leaving barely a trace behind thanks to Grant's old stealth field belt. Every few steps, Kari would stop and glance behind them. She could feel something, not see it, but sense it like shadows, moving fast, hiding just out of view. "They're coming," she whispered. "I know," Grant said, gripping his rifle tighter. "But they won't take you. Just a few miles from the canyon entrance." Kari suddenly dropped to her knees. "Stop," she cried, holding her head. "They're sending a signal stronger now." Grant scanned the trees, but saw nothing. Then he heard it, a soft hum growing louder. Machines, big ones, from between the trees. 6 spider-like mechs appeared, crawling fast across the snow, red lights blinking across their arms. They weren't just drones, they were hunter units, each armed with stun nets and tranquilizer darts. They didn't want to kill Kari. They wanted to take her alive. "Kari, stay behind me," Grant shouted, firing the first shot. His blaster hit the lead mech in the face, knocking it back. But the others kept charging. Kari stood, eyes glowing faintly blue. "I don't want to hurt them," she said. "You won't," Grant said. "Just stop them." She closed her eyes, raised both hands, and whispered a word. The snow around them suddenly lifted like smoke, forming a barrier. The machines crashed into it, then stopped, frozen in place, one by one. Their red lights flickered, turned blue, then died. They collapsed into the snow, powerless. Grant looked at Kari, amazed. "You're learning to control it." Kari opened her eyes, breathing hard. "It hurts. But I didn't break them." "No," Grant said with a proud smile. "You saved us." They reached the old mining canyon by nightfall. The entrance was hidden under rocks and ice. But Grant knew where to dig. Once inside, the temperature dropped even lower, but the tunnels offered safety. He lit a fire, set up a heater, and gave Kari a blanket. She sat close to him, hands still cold. "I used to be afraid of the dark," she said. "Now I feel safer in it." Grant looked at her. "You've come a long way from the girl I found in the snow." Kari smiled, tired but grateful. "Because of you," she whispered, hours later. While Kari rested, Grant checked the mech remains he had collected earlier. Inside one of the mech's memory cores, he found a command file. Operation Retrieve. Primary order, Asset Kara 7. Secondary, Eliminate human interference. He clenched his fist. They weren't just hunting Kari. They were planning to kill him, too, to them. He was just an obstacle. He looked over at Kari, sleeping peacefully. No? Not peacefully. She was shaking, her lips moving like she was trapped in a nightmare. "Kari." He rushed to her side. She suddenly sat up, eyes wide and glowing brightly. "They're in my head again," she cried. "They want me to come back." "Don't listen to them," he said. "You're free, but they say I'll never be free." She whispered that they made me, that I belong to them. Grant knelt down and placed her hand in his. "Kari, listen to me. You are not a thing. You don't belong to anyone. You choose who you are. And I choose you. Every single day." Her glowing eyes softened. "I choose you too." "Dad," she whispered. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the tunnel. The wall behind them exploded, rocks flying everywhere. 3 alien soldiers in black armor stepped in. Weapons raised, Grant jumped to his feet, shielding Kari's step. Away from the asset, one soldier ordered in a cold, mechanical voice. "She is property of the Drainery Syndicate." "Not anymore," Grant growled. "She's my daughter." The lead soldier raised his weapon. "In that case, you are in violation of Syndicate law." Before he could shoot, Kari stepped forward. Her hands glowed bright, her voice firm. "You don't control me," she said. "You don't own me." A pulse of energy erupted from her chest. Not violent, not deadly, but powerful enough to push the soldiers back, forcing their visors to go dark. The tunnel shook with the force, and the walls cracked. Grant grabbed Kari's hand. "We need to go, now." Together, they ran deeper into the tunnel system. Behind them, the roof began to collapse, trapping the soldiers under falling stone. They stopped only when they reached a large underground chamber. Old mining machines rested in silence. The place had power, barely enough for lights and warmth. Kari sat on a crate, eyes closed. "That wasn't just defense," she said softly. "That was something new. I felt everything, every signal, every machine, even their fear." Grant looked concerned. "Is it too much for you?" She shook her head. "No, it felt right, but I still don't know what I really am," she added. "Am I a weapon pretending to be a girl, or a girl trying not to become a weapon?" Grant sat beside her. "You're Kari, you're my daughter. And whatever else you are, we'll figure it out together." Far above, in the ship hovering in orbit, a tall figure watched the recordings with interest. The Drainery scientist tapped his fingers together, eyes full of wonder. "She's evolving," he said, "faster than expected, but the human?" The guard asked. The scientist smiled. "The human is the key. His emotional bond is unlocking her true potential." He leaned closer to the screen and whispered, "This isn't a recovery mission anymore. This is a test." Deep inside the old mining chamber, the air was heavy. The silence after the escape felt louder than the blasts they had just run from. Kari sat beside the dim power console, her fingers playing with a broken wire, but her eyes, golden and glowing, were fixed on the floor. She hadn't spoken much since they escaped the Syndicate soldiers. Grant was checking the equipment and recharging a power cell, but he kept glancing over at her. He could feel something had changed inside her. He walked over and sat beside her. "You okay?" Kari didn't answer at first, then said quietly, Something opened inside me when they attacked. It was like a door I didn't know was there. She looked at him, her voice shaky. I saw memories that aren't mine. It's rooms full of children. In glass tubes, machines whispering, voices telling me who to be, what to do. Grant gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Those are old commands, he said. They don't control you anymore, Kari whispered. But what if they're still there? What if I lose control one day, and I hurt you? You won't, Grant said firmly. You're stronger than them. Later, while Kari rested, Grant activated a long-range signal interceptor. He wanted to hear what the syndicate was planning. A soft buzz turned into broken alien words. Subject Kari 7. Showing unexpected cognitive development. Human contact accelerating emotional independence. Prepare phase 2 retrieval. Grant's jaw tightened. They weren't giving up. They were watching her like she was. Still part of an experiment, they didn't care about her safety. Only results. He shut the receiver off and sat down near Kari. Her breathing was calm now. She looked peaceful, like any young girl her age should. But Grant knew Kari was not just a child. She was carrying something inside her, something far greater. And far more dangerous than either of them truly understood. The next morning, Kari woke before Grant. She walked through the mining chamber, her steps light and silent. She came across a broken control panel covered in dust and old alien script. Her fingers moved over it, and suddenly, the console lit up. Blue lines of energy flowed across the metal surface, forming symbols she didn't recognize yet somehow understood. Then, the panel spoke in a deep, mechanical voice. Kari 7. Authorization confirmed. Kari froze. No, she whispered. I didn't mean to activate anything, but the machine continued, awakening genetic core. Downloading restricted memory. Kari clutched her head as a rush of data poured into her brain. Images, sounds, commands, all from the hidden part of her. She saw a lab. White walls, cold lights, other children, some alive, some lifeless, and then herself, connected to a giant machine pulsing with alien energy. She screamed. The power in the chamber flickered and surged. Machines nearby sparked, and lights exploded. Grant jumped up, rushing to her. Kari. What's happening? I didn't mean to. I touched the panel, and Meat called me. She fell into his arms, breathing hard. I saw them. The ones who made me. They're still watching, still waiting. Grant held her tightly. We'll stop them. We'll end this. That night, Kari told him everything she had seen. I wasn't born like normal kids, she said. I was grown. Each part of me was built for a reason. My mind, my powers, even my emotions. She looked down. But something went wrong. I was supposed to follow their voice, obey their orders, but I didn't. I felt something different. I felt fear. Then I felt anger. Then I ran. Grant didn't speak. He just listened. She needed to say it out loud. I wasn't supposed to care about anything. She continued. But when you found me in the snow, you gave me warmth. You gave me a name that wasn't just a number. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know who I'm supposed to be, but I want to be your daughter. Grant wiped her tears and smiled. You already are. The next day, a small rebel group arrived at the canyon base. Grant had sent a silent beacon to them the night before. They were ex-soldiers, hackers, and mechanics people who hated the syndicate. One of them, a female scientist named Arla, examined Kari carefully. She scanned her body, checked her vitals, and studied the strange symbols Kari had drawn. She's carrying something deep in her DNA, Arla said. Something no other subject had. What is it? Grant asked. A command override chip, Arla replied, hidden in her brainstem. If triggered remotely, it can shut her down or take full control. Kari's eyes widened. So I'm still their puppet? Not exactly, Arla said. Yours is different. It's not fully connected. which means you blocked it. Somehow your mind fought back. Kari stood up, confused and angry. I don't want it inside me. I want it out. Arla looked at her gently. We can try to remove it, but it's risky. Grant stepped forward. What kind of risk? If we fail, Arla said, she could lose her powers. Or worse, she might not wake up again. Kari looked at Grant. I don't care if I lose my powers, she said. I just don't want to be their weapon anymore. Grant knelt down and looked into her eyes. You're not their weapon. You're my child. But this is your choice. Whatever you decide. I'll be with you, Kari nodded. I want to be free. The rebels prepared a small surgical chamber deep within the canyon. Kari laid on the table, nervous but calm. Grant held her hand, never letting go. Arla began the procedure, carefully. Mapping Kari's neural patterns, the chip was deep but not unreachable for 2 hours. The team worked in silence. Kari drifted between consciousness and sleep. She saw memories again, old ones of tubes and wires. But this time, she also saw new ones. Laughter, warmth, Grant's voice calling her name. When she woke, the first thing she saw was his face, smiling, relieved. It's gone, he said. The chip. It's gone. Kari blinked. I feel. Lighter, she touched her forehead, and quieter. Like? I'm alone in my mind again. Grant nodded. No more voices. She smiled. No more cages, but far above. In the black ship hiding in orbit, the scientist watched the data. Stream cut out. He frowned. She removed the chip, he said. One of the guards asked, should we send reinforcements? No, the scientist said with a smirk. Let her believe she's free. Let her think she's safe. The real test hasn't started yet. He turned off the screen and whispered, she's evolving faster than we imagined. And that human, he's not a weakness. He's the reason she's becoming unstoppable. Kari stood at the edge of the canyon tunnel. Eyes closed, the wind passed gently over her pale face. She felt something she had never felt before. Stillness, peace. For the first time in her life, there were no voices in her head. No commands, no pain, just silence behind her. Grant stood with arms crossed, watching carefully. He didn't say anything. He knew she needed this moment. It's quiet, Kari whispered finally, turning to face him. No machines in my mind. No orders from them. Her golden eyes met. His, I'm really free, Dad. Grant smiled and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You did it, kid. The rebel base below the canyon was now fully operational. More people were joining freedom fighters, outlaws, refugees. They had heard of the girl who shut down syndicate drones with her mind. Some feared her, others admired her. But one thing was certain, Kari had become a symbol. Arla, the scientist who helped remove Kari's chip, pulled Grant aside. She's changing, Arla said, faster than anything I've seen. What do you mean? Grant asked. Her body is repairing faster. Her mind is learning quicker. And her energy levels keep increasing. Arla paused before continuing. She's evolving beyond what the syndicate created. This isn't just tech anymore. This is something new, something human. Later that night, Kari sat by a small fire in the underground camp. She watched the flames, thinking deeply. Grant sat beside her with a mug of warm soup. Do you think I scare people? Kari asked suddenly. Grant was quiet for a moment, then said, some people fear what they don't understand. He took a sip and added, but fear isn't always bad. It can turn into respect, into awe. Kari tilted her head. I don't want them to fear me. I just want to live, laugh, be normal. Grant chuckled softly. Kari, normal is overrated. She smiled, leaning against his arm, but peace never lasts long. 2 days later, while the rebels were training near the canyon wall, the alarms began to scream. A bright light flashed in the sky. And then a sound like thunder cracked the air. The syndicate had arrived, and this time, they weren't sending drones. They sent soldiers, ships, and a weapon of their own. Grant grabbed his blaster. Kari ran behind him. The base was already in motion, fighters preparing, turrets activating, codes being shouted. Arla met them at the control center. "They're attacking from 3 sides," she said quickly. "They're jamming our outer sensors. We can't see their full numbers." Kari looked at the hologram map and pointed. "They'll hit here, the power node." "How do you know?" Arla asked. Kari's eyes flickered gold. "I can feel them," she said. "Their minds are full of commands. They want to shut us down before we can fight back." Grant turned to her. "Kari, we need to fall back. You're not ready to face them all." "I am now," she said firmly. "I can't hide anymore." Before he could answer, a massive explosion rocked the tunnel. Screams echoed from the side corridors, and smoke filled the air. A wall burst open, and a new enemy stepped through. Not a soldier, not a machine, but something different. A towering humanoid figure with glowing red eyes and skin made of black metal and flesh. It's one of their new prototypes. Arla gasped. A living weapon. The creature scanned the room. Its voice cold and robotic. "Target, Kari 7, mission. Terminate all resistance." Grant raised his blaster. Kari stepped in front of him. "No," she whispered. "He's here for me." The creature lunged forward with inhuman speed. Kari raised both hands, and a barrier of glowing light formed in front of her. The monster hit it and was thrown back with a crash. Kari's hair floated upward, her body surrounded by golden energy. "I'm not your weapon," she said loudly. "I'm not your experiment. I'm not your property." She stepped forward. The lights flickered, then burst. The air felt thick with power. Her power. The creature attacked again, firing energy blasts from its arms. Kari caught them mid-air and crushed them with her hands. Her eyes glowed like stars now, full of light and rage. "Leave," she ordered. "Or I will break you." The creature hesitated, then turned to flee, but Kari reached out, and the air around it folded inward. The prototype collapsed, lifeless. Everyone stared at her in silence. Even the rebels who once feared her now looked at her in awe. Kari turned to Grant, shaking slightly. "I didn't want to, but I had to." Grant rushed forward and held her. "You did what you had to protect all of us." But the attack wasn't over yet. Syndicate ships broke through the outer defenses. Explosions lit up the sky. Rebel fighters were being pushed back. "We have to evacuate," Arla shouted. "They're going to bomb the canyon." Grant grabbed Kari's hand. "We're getting out of here." But Kari stood still. "No," she said. "If I run again, they'll follow. They'll never stop until they take me." She looked up at the cliff wall. "I can feel their main ship above us." "Then what do you plan to do?" Grant asked. "I'm going up there," she said. "I'll stop them myself, Kari." "No." Grant grabbed her shoulders. "It's suicide." But Kari smiled. "Not if you're with me." They took the emergency lift to the upper cliffs. Kari stood at the edge, wind blowing her hair wildly. Above, the Black Syndicate command ship hovered, humming with power. Grant held her hand. "If we don't come back, we will." She interrupted. "I believe in us." She looked at him one more time. "Thank you for finding me in the snow." He smiled. "And thank you for becoming my daughter." Kari closed her eyes, and her body began to glow. Wings of pure golden energy formed behind her. The lift cable snapped, and both of them shot into the sky like a comet rising through the clouds. Kari and Grant rose high into the sky like a streak of golden fire. Below them, the rebel base burned in flames, and syndicate warships hovered over the cliffs, but neither of them looked down. Their eyes were fixed on the dark ship above. Floating fortress of metal and shadow, inside the syndicate vessel, alarms rang across the control deck. "She's coming," an officer shouted. Kari 7 is approaching at high speed. The lead scientist stood calm, staring at the glowing figure on the monitor. It's time, he said softly. Let's see what she has become. Kari broke through the ship's outer shield like a bullet. The entrance bay doors exploded open as she and Grant landed inside. Guards rushed forward, but she raised one hand. The lights in their weapons blinked and died. Their machines stopped moving, their suits shut down. Grant stayed close behind her, blaster ready. But he knew now Kari was more powerful than any weapon ever built. And still, she had the heart of a child, his child. They moved through the cold hallways of the ship. Kari's eyes scanned every wall. Every signal, I can feel them, she whispered. There are hundreds. But they're afraid, Grant smiled. They should be, as they reached the core chamber. Giant doors slid open automatically. Inside stood the man behind it, the lead syndicate scientist. He looked calm, almost proud. Kari 7. He said, You've grown. I'm not Kara 7, she replied, voice steady. I'm Kari, daughter of a human, not your creation. You are what we made you to be, he said, stepping forward, a tool, a weapon, a breakthrough. Kari's golden eyes narrowed. You made a mistake, he chuckled coldly. No. You were always meant to evolve. We just didn't expect love to be the trigger, he pointed. Toward Grant, that man is not your father. He is a weakness. No, Kari said. Stepping forward, he's my strength. Suddenly, the room darkened, and the scientist raised a small device from the floor. Machines began to rise, giant armored units with rotating arms and bladed legs. 10 of them surrounded Kari and Grant. You have power, child, the scientist said. But let's see if your emotions can save you now. Kari looked around, calm and focused. She turned to Grant. Do you trust me? Always, he said. She reached out and took his hand. Together. They glowed brighter than any star. The machines charged forward, metal claws reaching out. Kari's body lifted into the air. Waves of golden light exploded from her. The machines were thrown back like toys, slamming into walls and falling apart. The ground shook. The air rippled with power. Every control panel shorted out. The syndicate's strongest machines were nothing against her will. But Kari wasn't done. She looked at the scientist, her voice soft but unshakable. You built me to be controlled, but I chose to be loved. You gave me cold wires, she said, stepping closer, but he gave me warm hands. You gave me numbers, she whispered, but he gave me a name. The scientist backed away. Panicked, he pressed buttons wildly, but nothing responded. Kari raised her hand. Just one sand, the entire ship's systems shut down. Lights faded, engines stalled, weapons powered off. The ship floated silently. Helpless, she turned to Grant. Her power gently fading now. I think it's over, she whispered. He smiled. You did it suddenly. The ship trembled. Something deep in the core had been damaged. A voice came over the speakers. Warning. Main reactor unstable. Ship will self-destruct in 3 minutes. Kari looked around quickly. We need to get out. There's an escape pod in the lower bay, Grant shouted. They ran, dodging falling beams and sparks as they reached the escape pod. Grant pushed Kari inside. What about you? She asked. Afraid? I'm right behind you, he said, slamming the door. The pod launched seconds before the explosion. From space, the syndicate ship burst apart in a wave of light. The blast spread across the sky like fireworks. Kari watched in silence, praying Grant was inside. Then, she heard his voice over the pod speaker. I told you I'd never leave you. Her face lit up with joy. You made it. Of course I did, Grant chuckled. I promised you, remember? The pod landed in the snowy valley near the rebel base. Rebels rushed to meet them, cheering as Kari stepped out. They had heard what she did. They had seen the ship fall. Kari looked at them, nervous. But they didn't fear her anymore. They respected her. She wasn't a weapon, she was hope. Arla hugged her gently. You didn't just win a fight. Kari, you started a new chapter. Weeks passed, the snow began to melt, the valley grew warmer. Kari helped rebuild the base, planting new trees, drawing laughter on walls. She wasn't just a powerful being now, she was a little girl finally getting a childhood. One day, she walked up to Grant holding a handmade bracelet. It was simple string and beads, but on it were 3 letters, Deity. She handed it to him with a shy smile. I made this for you. Grant took it, heart full. It's perfect. She leaned on his arm and whispered, I was frozen once. I didn't even know what love felt like. But now? He asked. She looked up at the clear sky. Now I'm free.